These are the adventures of a party going through the grim world of perilous adventure. Chapter 4. Eventually, the adventurers arrive at the abandoned mine entrance. The air is damp and stale, and the darkness within seems to swallow any light that tries to penetrate it. Lethelian pulls out a torch and lights it, revealing a narrow tunnel leading deeper into the earth. The group takes a deep breath and begins to descend into the mine, unsure of what they may find within. As they make their way down the mine, they can see that it is dark and cramped. The air is thick with dust and the smell of earth, and their footsteps echo loudly in the narrow tunnel. The occasional dripping of water from the ceiling adds to the eerie atmosphere. Lethelian leads the way, moving cautiously and keeping his bow at the ready. Amelia follows closely behind holding the torch, and Grimgor brings up the rear, gripping the hilt of his axe. After a few minutes of walking, they come across a fork in the tunnel. The ranger stops and examines the walls and ground.
"I think we should take the left path,"
he says, pointing to the tunnel on the left.
"The tracks on the ground suggest that someone has been down there recently."
They follow Lethelian down the left tunnel. As they walk, they start to hear the sound of running water. After a few more minutes of walking, the tunnel opens up into a large cavern. The sound of the water is much louder now, and they can see a small stream running through the cavern. Lethelian cautiously approaches the stream, examining the rocks and pebbles on the bank.
"I think I saw something,"
he says.
"Amelia, take the torch outside the cave."
Amelia listens and leaves the elf alone in the dark cavern.
"This is it. Come here,"
he says, and the rest of the group enters as Lethelian shows them a small pebble in the palm of his glove.
"This is what we came for."
Amelia looks at the pebble with fascination.
"It's so beautiful,"
she says.
"but I can feel great power emanating from it. It's dangerous."
Grundnir grunts angrily.
"Be careful. You don't want to get any of that stuff on you."
Lethelian says.
"Agreed. Let's gather what we can and get out of here."
Lethelian manages to find 3 pebbles of warp stone in the whole stream that runs for about 60 feet through the cavern before disappearing under the rock. They were easy to spot in the dark with their dim green glow. As Lethelian picks up the 3 pebbles of warpstone, the green glow intensifies, and the air around them seems to grow heavy with a palpable energy. With the valuable substance in hand, they go out of the mine and begin their journey back to Marienburg, being extra cautious not to drop or mishandle the stones. On their way back through the forest, they notice that it is eerily quiet. The feeling of a constant unease and strange energy followed them with every mile. Suddenly, they hear rustling in bushes behind them and the sound of footsteps approaching. Before they can react, a group of 6 men emerge from hiding, armed with swords and wearing tattered clothes. "Hand over your valuables and no one gets hurt," the leader of men demands. Lethelian says,
"Easy, men. We are only simple travelers and carry nothing of real value. Just some food for the road, and we're running out of it since we almost reached Marienburg."
The bandits eye them warily but seem to be convinced by Lethelian's words. One of the bandits steps forward, eyeing the bag Grundnir was carrying. "You say you have no valuables, but that bag looks like it could hold something worth it. Hand it over and we'll let you be on your way," he says gruffly. The dwarf snarls in response, gripping his axe tighter.
"This is our food and supplies. We won't be giving it up so easily."
The bandit scowls, pointing his sword. "Then we'll just have to take it by force."
"Wait!"
Lethelian shouts.
"We do have some valuables. Will you be willing to let us go if we give it to you?"
he asks the leader of bandits, waiting for his response. The bandit leader eyes Lethelian suspiciously before responding. "Well, let's see what you got then. Hand it over, and maybe we'll let you go with your lives." The ranger puts his hand in a leather pouch and pulls out 2 warp stones and puts them in each hand.
"I will give you our emeralds, and you let us leave."
He then tosses both stones in the air, one to the leader and one to the other bandit on his left. As soon as the stones touched their unprotected hands, they both drop the stones and start screaming horribly, as their hands begin to swell. They fall on the ground as their bodies begin to change color and convulse, causing them to writhe in agony. Their skin and muscles begin to swell and distort, and strange bone protrusions start bursting from their flesh. Their barely recognizable faces open up, revealing bones and patches of fur and scale. Mutations become too much for their bodies to handle, and they both let out blood-curdling screams before stilling lifelessly on the ground. The other bandits, witnessing the horrifying sight, flee the site in terror as fast as they could. Amelia, taken aback by the sudden mutation and death of the bandits, feels her stomach churn and she turns away vomiting. After a few moments, she manages to compose herself and take a deep breath, trying to shake off the shock of what she has just witnessed. Grundnir puts his hand on her shoulder in comfort.
"It's all right, lass. We did what we had to do to protect ourselves. It's a harsh world, but we have to go through it."
Amelia nods and takes a deep breath, steadying herself.
Yeah, you are right. Thank you.
She says to Grundnir. Lethilian very carefully picks up the 2 pebbles from the ground, looking at the gruesomely twisted bodies. He says,
"I now understand why this substance is so illegal and feared. Come on, let's take these to Rufus von Mecklenburg as soon as possible and get rid of them."
The group makes their way back to Marienburg, taking extra precautions to avoid any further dangers. They immediately rush to the von Mecklenburg estate and ask to see Lord Rufus for the urgent matter. He receives them right away and they quickly go up the stairs to his study. As soon as they entered, Lethilian throws the sack containing 3 warp stones on his desk. Lord Mecklenburg gives him a sharp look and then looks at the leather sack. He then puts on his gloves and his scarf over his face and slowly removes the content. He inspects the stones carefully and then looks at the adventurers. He opens his drawer and pulls out a small black metal box with demonic depictions and symbols. He carefully puts the 3 pebbles in it and returns it back in the drawer. "I see that you not only got the substance, but you had the opportunity to witness its wonders." He leans back in his chair rubbing his hands. "Now, for your payment. Your precious black grimoire tome was written by none other than Heinrich Kemmler. He was a powerful necromancer who was known for his dark and twisted magical experiments which he performed in his castle in Sylvania. However, the castle was eventually destroyed by the Empire's forces, and the grimoire was believed to have been lost. Kemmler sought to achieve immortality and was known to have delved into almost every forbidden practice there is. Naturally, he was responsible for countless atrocities during his power and influence. The Black Grimoire is one of the tomes he wrote, but there are a couple of others lost to history. As for his castle, it is said to be located deep within the Grey Mountains, but its exact location is unknown. Empire's secret, no doubt. Many have searched for it, but none have found it, and some never returned. He takes a sip of wine before continuing. The Black Grimoire is said to contain some of his most powerful spells and incantations. It is one extremely dangerous artifact, and its possession can bring great harm to those who seek to use it. Rufus leans forward and rests his elbows on the desk, giving him a threatening look. "I strongly advise that you leave this matter alone. There are dark forces at work here, and meddling with them could have dire consequences." Lethilian replies,
We are only investigating the tome's origins as an assignment. The matter do not concern us personally. Thank you for your information, Lord Mecklenburg. Farewell.
Rufus nods and bids farewell to the group as they depart from his estate. As they leave, Amelia turns to Lethelian and Grundnir and says,
I can't help but feel uneasy about this. The idea of being near the artifact of a powerful necromancer like Heinrich Kemmler is troubling.
Lethelian nods in agreement.
It is. If we should continue to investigate the matter, we must be cautious.
Upon returning to Marienburg, the adventurers head to the Merchants' Guild to report what they have learned to the head merchant. As the adventurers enter the guild, they see Hermann Meyer sitting at his desk, busy with paperwork. He looks up at them and nods in greeting. Ah, you have returned. What news do you bring? He asks. Lethelian steps forward and says,
We have some information of Black Grimoire's origin. It was written by the necromancer, Heinrich Kemmler.
Lethelian continues to share everything Lord Rufus told him about the matter. Meyer's eyes widen as he listens and then takes a moment to compose himself. Thank you for your work, all of you. This information will be useful for our purposes. Here is your reward. He hands over a pouch of gold coins to the adventurers. He stares blankly in deep thought for a moment and then says, I must say this is a bit beyond me. I have to see what is the next step that we must take. Please, go and have a rest. If anyone deserved it, it's you. Your services have been of great value to me and the city, and I would like to continue working with you. Please, come back tomorrow while I speak to the authorities to see what should be our next course of action. Exiting the Merchants' Guild, the group decides to go to the tavern and have a great meal and celebrate their efforts with song and drinks. They spend the most of that night enjoying the music of the bards, talking about their victories, watching Grundnir throwing axe at the tavern's target, all while drinking away the troubles of life, and preparing for the adventures that lie ahead.